Hey, welcome to episode number 21 of the Debt Free Dad podcast. So let me ask you a question. What is a credit score? And is a credit score the most important thing in your financial life? And if you want to reach a stress-free and debt-free life and reach financial freedom, which we talk about a lot on this show, does a credit score really matter? We're going to tackle this subject on today's show. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Debt Free Dad podcast, where we're helping normal, everyday people learn how to save money and kick debt so they can live a happier and stress-free life. Now here's your host, Debt Free Dad, Brad Nelson.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's show. You can find me on Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube, and Instagram. Just search Brad Nelson, Debt Free Dad. And we would love to connect with you on one of those social platforms. So, guys, today, super fun topic. Lots of hate mail going to come after this one, I bet. But today, seriously, we're talking about credit scores. And I know we talked about new cars not that long ago. We did a podcast. And I would say credit scores in new cars are pretty much, from a financial standpoint, from a personal finance standpoint, are probably the hottest debates where people just get pissed off at each other. And I'm sure we're probably going to, rub some people the wrong way with some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today, at least from my standpoint anyways. All right. So first, let's talk about what a credit score is. So what I did is I went and pulled some information from some official credit score people, Experian. And this is off the Experian website. It's an article written by Dan Aiken. And this is what Dan has to say about credit scores. All credit scores have the same basic goal, helping lenders and other potential creditors, such as landlords and utility companies, understand how risky it may be to do business with you. High credit scores indicate a relatively low likelihood of default and relatively low risk for creditors. Lower scores, in turn, indicate greater risk. Credit scores are calculated using a computer program known as scoring models. Now, scoring models perform sophisticated statistical analysis on the contents of your credit report. So your history of borrowing and repaying debts as recorded by the three national credit bureaus, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. Now, scoring models look for patterns in your credit report data that historically have been associated with payment defaults among consumers. And based on the prevalence or absence of these patterns, scoring models assign you a score, usually in the form of a 3-digit number, reflecting your predicted riskiness relative to other consumers. So for those of you who have never heard the official credit score description, that is exactly what a credit score is. And what we want to focus on here in today's show is really the most popular scoring method that's out there, and that is the FICO score. This is probably the most prevalent scoring model that's being used out there by most lenders. And if you hear the word FICO, people automatically assume and know that's a credit score, right? So what I want to do is first kick off and kind of talk about the FICO score. How is it made up? How does it break down? How does your credit score built? And then we're going to talk about some of the popular benefits of having good credit scores. And then we're going to flip the switch and say, is this really needed to reach a stress-free and debt-free life? And we're going to play a little devil's advocate with all of you. And hopefully at the end of the show, you can decide where you sit on this argument. So first, let's break down the FICO score calculation. 35%, number one, we're going to do this in percentages. 35% of the FICO score is based on payment history. 35%. It is the most important thing that makes up your score. So making payments on time is the most important thing you can do to maintain and build a good credit score. All right. 30% is what's owed. All right. Is the amount owed. So if you're an individual who is maxing out credit cards, that's not going to be very good for your score. In fact, the overall general rule is shoot for about 30% or less of your credit utilization. So let's use easy math. Let's say you have a credit card that has a $1,000 limit on it. Their suggestion is not to have over a $300 balance, and likely, hopefully, you should have less than that. And that goes across the board on all of your accounts, because that means that you're not stretching yourself too thin, you're using credit responsibly, or at least that's what the FICO score is saying. Not us on this podcast, but what the FICO score is saying. All right. 15% is length of history. So having a good history with your creditors is important for your score. You probably have heard the argument from a lot of people of, well, if I pay off a credit card, I shouldn't close the account because that could lower my score. That is actually very true. It could. So that length of history, it does play a role in your overall credit score. 10% of your FICO score is made up by new credit. So literally 10% of is what have you been doing lately? You know, have you been shopping things around? Have you been taking out new debt? 10% of your score is going to be made up with that. And then the last 10% is your credit mix. So typically the FICO doesn't want you to see that you're really heavy on just credit cards. They want to see like a good mix of some debt products, a mortgage, some, you know, a credit card or two, maybe an auto loan, things like that, maybe a student loan. So they want to see a good mix, and that's how it's broken down. So real quick, again, 35% payment history, 30% amount owed, 15% length of history, 10% new credit, and 10% credit mix. And I want you to kind of remember and think about those numbers a little bit later on here in the show, because we're going to kind of come back to this, and we're going to kind of talk about why that might be an issue to your overall financial health. So first, before we get there, let's talk about some of the more common and popular benefits of good credit scores. Number one is you're more likely to be approved. I mean, that's just why you want to have a good credit score for the most part, right? Is that you're going to get approved for higher limits. You're going to have more options when you take out loans. And especially if you're looking at ever making a home purchase, this is probably one of the number one reasons why most people will come to us and ask us about credit scores. Is it's usually not to get a credit card or a car loan. It's 9 times out of 10 to buy a house. That's why people want to build and grow their credit score. Number two popular benefit of having a good credit score is lower interest on your products that you're buying. So essentially, the high credit score is going to help you save some money on all of the loan products that you're going to take out over your lifetime. Number three is that it's easier approval for renting a home or an apartment, which is very true. This argument holds water, especially if you're going to be renting a home or an apartment from, say, a property management company. Let's say you're not working directly with the owner of the property. Let's say you're working with an employee who works for a property management company. They're instructed to pay attention to that FICO score. Look at your credit score. Look at your payment history. Look at your rent from previous, how did you make your payments on time? Look at your utility bills. Are you making your bills on time? They're going to use that to determine on whether or not you're going to be a good tenant in their building. Number four, probably an argument that I hear very often, is you get better car insurance rates, which also does hold some water. I mean, this is a true statement. You can get better car insurance rates, and from my understanding and talking to my insurance agent, is that it goes into what they call as more of an insurance score. So it's not like they take the FICO score and they just directly plug it in and that's what your rate is. It's your credit scores in general are figured into somewhat of an insurance score, and those do affect your insurance rates over time. Number five, you get to avoid security deposits on cell phones and utilities. So for instance, if you're a young adult, or if you have a young adult and they get a cell phone, you might have had to do a security deposit with them because they don't really have any established credit. Or if you're an official adult and you just haven't been very good at paying your bills, you may have had to pay a security deposit. Maybe if you moved, maybe you weren't very good at paying your utilities at your last residence, you may have had to pay a security deposit on your next residence. So those are going to be some reasons why someone may want to have a great credit score. So guys, we're going to take a quick break. And I know I've taken up the first half of the show kind of running through what a credit score is. But on the second half of the show, we are going to kind of break this down a little bit and dissect it. Does this stuff really matter when we're talking about financial freedom? We'll be right back. Hey, if you love planners, this is for you. Do you know why planners frustrate me, though? Because they only get it half right. Now, sure, they're really fancy at helping you manage your time, which is really important, obviously, but where they get it wrong is money. Now, I believe that there are two important resources that you need to have control of in your life to have success. One is time, and the other one is your money. And most planners don't include any financial planning, and that's frustrating. Things like keeping track of paydays and when bills are due, spending habits, yearly expenses, budgets, cash flow planning, debt elimination plans, goal planning. These things are a real pain in the butt because then you have to create your own. And who has time for all that? So instead, what happens for most of us? Nothing. We tend to ignore our finances even more, and things only get worse. Well, that can all end today. I am so excited to announce the release of my brand new, totally awesome debt freedom planner here this year. Now, before you say, Brad, I already have a planner. Now, I'm going to here to tell you that this is not an ordinary day planner. This Debt Freedom Planner is a companion tool that works with your day planner to help you save more money, pay off debt, and melt away financial stress. This is the tool that we've all been waiting for. Also, if you're not a paper person, maybe you love spreadsheets or electronic versions, we've got a digital version available to you as well. So head on over to the realdebtfreedad.com, click on the Debt Freedom Planner in the menu at the top of the page, get all those details, and order your very own Debt Freedom Planner today. Hey, welcome back to the show. So today we are talking all about credit scores and how to stop living in the shadows of the credit score. So guys, this is where the fight words come out. So let's kind of break this down a little bit. So now that we talked about, and again, I kind of made a joke in the beginning of the show that I kind of took up the first half, and it's kind of hard to have an open discussion because we're just talking about facts, right? Just talking about the facts of what a credit score is, and what are some of the good reasons to have them. So let's kind of have more of an open discussion about, does this really make sense if you want to reach financial freedom? So what are the negatives to some of the credit scores? I think number one, overall, I think most people have been very misled on the credit score and what it actually is. I think a lot of people genuinely feel that if they have a good credit score, it means that they are also doing very well with their money. And I know that for a fact because I used to think that very early on in my 20s and even late in my 20s. Shoot, I thought getting approved meant that I was doing well. I mean, they wouldn't give broke people money, right? But they do, right? Because I was very broke, and they still keep giving you more and more money and more debt. In fact, I had a really good credit score for a long period of time. In fact, the first payment I ever missed, I was very good at making my payments, but I was always broke. The first payment I ever missed was that house that I got foreclosed on. It was the worst day of my life missing that first payment. And you got to think it was in my early 30s, so I went like 12 to 14 years making payments. And that was the first one that I missed. That was painful because I was so hell-bent on these credit scores. So, guys, how did you guys grow up thinking about these credit score things? Because I know for me, I just automatically always just thought it was the end-all be-all. If you got a good credit score, that means that you're making it. You're really doing well.
I mean, yeah, it was drilled into my head, at least growing up, that pay your bills on time, make sure you're doing all the right things to have that better credit score. And I paid my bills on time just fine, but I did not have a good credit score because I had too many. So, but yeah, it was just drilled into our heads to really pay that stuff on time.
Yeah, I think the marketing has been, I think they've done a fantastic job at marketing it as well. I mean, if you look at the way credit is marketed, it's always about how to, very much so. And I mean, we've seen commercials here lately of, improve your credit score, consolidate your loans, improve your credit score. I think they've done a great job at, there's a term called gamification, where you take something and you almost make it a game of how can I raise my score? And it plays with our psyche. And if you don't think there's people that have sat around tables thinking of ways to get you to think that way, that is what their job is how can we make this a game to get it so ingrained in your head? And I think that's why a lot of people, and for us early on, it was, I want to get my credit score up, to show that, and to see that needle move, it felt good. Cause that's just what was marketed to me and shown to me. That's what mattered.
Yep, absolutely. We see this all the time. I'll see people celebrate, oh, my score jumped 20 points. It is so true. It is so true. And actually, if you think about it, in a lot of ways in how we're getting out of debt, we use that same psychological gamification approach in the same sense with the debt snowball. It's like that psychological change of getting those small wins, paying off, checking it off, seeing progress. that's the same game you're playing and getting out of debt that the credit scores are using against you. It's very true. Yeah, absolutely. So like I mentioned, I wanted you guys to keep in mind those percentages that we shared, and what those things we're focusing on. Again, they're talking about payment history, mix of credit, how well you pay, just all of those things, the amount of debt you carry. Notice what's all in common of those points that they're scoring you on. Debt, right? It's not taking account your overall financial life. It doesn't say how much money do you have in your checking account, how active are you saving, do you have an emergency fund, do you save well for retirement, are you paying cash for purchases in your life? It doesn't say any of that stuff. It is simply scoring you on how well you play with debt products. That's why when I say the statement, people have been misled, that's why I feel they have, because I don't think there's a lot of people out there that truly understand what the credit score is really scoring you on. And as Ryan mentioned, that gamification and that idea of just, I've got to raise my credit score, I think is psychologically taken over and has kind of pushed out, okay, what are we actually really working on here? And why is this important? So that brings up the next question is, well, do you really need a credit score? And we get this question, Amber, you've been on plenty of our workshops. In fact, before we even started this podcast, you and I were talking about this, and we get this question all the time. And they say, Brad, well, if you're debt free and you don't have credit cards and you don't have any student loans, you don't have car payments and you don't have a mortgage, and I mean, how do you maintain your credit? Well, the straight up answer is I don't, right? And the only way you can maintain your credit is by using debt. And our family, we've decided not to do that. Now, I've been on my debt-free journey for over 10 years now, and I've been debt-free for over 6. And we're going to talk a little bit about the insurance here, but our family's got great insurance rates. We haven't personally seen this idea that you can't get good insurance rates without a good score. I've actually talked to my insurance agent to ensure that we are getting the great rates, and he ensures that we are. I do trust him. I've rented 2 homes without a credit score. They didn't even do a credit check. Now, you have to be somewhat strategic in how you go about doing some of this stuff. It's not going to always be easy when you don't play the game by the rules. You're going to have to work around some of these things, so you're going to have to be flexible in your approach. But to say that you can't rent is not true. I've lived it, and I've done it twice with little to no issue. So when you pay cash, like what our family does, and Amber and Ryan, you guys can share a little bit of your experience on this, but when you pay cash for everything, ultimately at the end of the day, your credit score is pretty useless. Like, we just don't have any use for it because we've come up with this kind of rule in our house where if we can't pay cash, we don't buy it, right? And that keeps us out of a lot of debt and a lot of financial stress. And it's worked very, very well for our family.
In your early journey of getting out of debt, I remember when we first wanted to get out of debt, our goal was to get a really good credit score so we could get into more debt by buying something, whether that be a house, whether that be a boat, whether that be another car. The purpose was not to be out of debt and then to not have a debt-free lifestyle. It was to pay off a bunch of bills, to have a higher credit score, to then go get back into debt again. And I think if you look at that, I think that's behind about a lot of people's goals, is to raise their credit score potentially in order to fulfill doing that. And I think what we learned along the way is I've shared, I want a boat, but I don't worry about my credit score now to buy the boat because I know we're going to pay cash for whatever boat I end up buying. So I don't really care what my credit score is. Now, does my credit score matter if I'm going to go borrow money for a boat? 100% it matters, but I don't have an intention anymore to borrow money for the boat. So I don't really care if my score is 850 or if it's 420 or if it's 0. It doesn't matter to me.
My credit score was bad from the time I think I got into college and started using debt. I'm being real honest here. It was just bad. So it didn't matter credit score or no credit score, good credit score. It was bad from the get-go. Did it get really good when I paid off my debt? Heck yeah. Does it matter a whole lot to me? Not necessarily, I don't think. And I don't see needing it either. We've paid cash already for cars and camper trailer and different stuff that we've wanted. So for us, it doesn't really matter at all. Yeah. Really.
So wait, the two of you are saying that you can still buy stuff, including a whole entire boat, with cash.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's crazy. So I think what we're all pointing out here and what we're getting to is that there is we talk very much about behavior and mindset change. You've got to flip the mindset change. You got to flip the mindset. You can't continuously keep saying the next time I purchase something, it's always about the payment. It's about the payment. It's about the payment. No, it's about how can I pay cash for the next item. And now, as the title of this podcast is called, you stop living in the shadows of the credit score and you start paying cash and not having to worry about someone approving you for things that you want to have in your life. You just earn them by saving up, being patient, and putting that money away.
I think where the debate really rages, and even with the way you started this off, and this is where I think a lot of people get all at each other's throats, is do you really need a credit score? And I think this is where people get lost in the difference between needing a credit score and wanting a credit score. So if you want to continue to be in debt, then yes, you'll need a good credit score so you can get low interest rates. If you want to be debt free, then you don't need a credit score. I think as I watch a lot of people argue about this, it ends up becoming, well, I'll get really bad interest rates on my next car I buy. Well, we basically are telling you shouldn't do that, and that's where a lot of people get angry because they start throwing out all these debt reasons why you need it.
Yeah.
But you even said it a minute ago where you're like, my first goal was doing this was so we could increase our credit score so that we could buy more stuff. But as we go on, and I could relate to that, but as we go on in the debt freedom path, then you're starting to see that you don't really need it anymore. And that's where the mindset shifts. So for people listening to this, they might be thinking, yeah, right, no, I definitely need it. But it all depends where you are on your journey to financial freedom.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up because that's right on. And earlier, if you're just brand new to this podcast, hopefully you made it break the wrong one. But seriously, I mean, it does. I didn't get to this mindset overnight. I was the same way, like Ryan's. I was the same way as Ryan, like same way as Amber. Like, it takes time to develop this mindset. And like today, 10 years after I started this journey, like I never think about credit scores. Like it's just not on my mind. Like we've just completely changed our lives when it comes to that. So let's break down, because I mentioned one of the most important reasons. Actually, before we get there, let's go back to those purchases and those debt products real quick, Ryan. I wanted to talk about that. I think some people get so upset about it because people take genuine pride in being approved. I remember there was a couple of people, and I see this stuff all the time. There was one specifically, I remember an individual celebrating, and I'm not going to go into the name of the card or anything, but it was one of these really nice kind of, you're kind of in the club type cards, and it's held for the elite of credit scores. Like not many people get this card. Well, when this person got this card, they were celebrating it all over Facebook on multiple different posts, and they're just thrilled. And it's like, I often wonder, it's like, why are you qualifying how well you're doing financially just because some dumb company approved you for their dumb card that they've just marketed to you, that it's like, you're part of this elite group now. That's all it is marketing. It's nothing. It's nothing.
And the company that marketed it to you knowing full well that they're hoping you don't pay your balance on that card.
Yes.
Like they didn't market it to you because they know you're going to do all the right things and be financially responsible. They're marketing it to you because they're taking a chance that you're going to carry a balance and pay them interest and make money off you. That's why they're in business.
So let's talk about houses, because like I said, one of the number one reasons why people want to build their credit, Amber, you know this. I mean, we hear this argument all the time. I can't get a house without a credit score. And this is one thing that I haven't done just yet. I have not bought a home without a credit score, but we will, and I will report to you that it can happen. But here's the thing I do know. I've personally reached out to 2 local banks in my area, 1 local credit union. All 3 of them told them my situation, told them that I'm debt free, told them that we plan to have a sizable down payment. I said I would be willing to approve everything, make all of our other payments on time, utilities, alternative credit lines. I mean, just all of this other stuff. And all three of them didn't even say maybe. They said, yes, we would be able to work with you. So without a credit score. And it's called manual underwriting. And yes, this manual underwriting is, it's a little bit more complicated. It takes more time. There's definitely more red tape, or let's say hoops to jump through, because an actual person is really going to kind of go through your situation and look at all the stuff that you have and look at how you are and how you're taking care of your finances. And so, it's not just, plugging some numbers in the computer and out spits this credit score and they say yes or no. It's a lot maybe thorough of a process of getting you into that house. But to say that you can't get a house without a credit score is just not true. And there's also other programs that I've seen that are out there available, especially even to lower income earners and lower income families who don't have credit scores. There's also alternative financing methods that are out there. So I wouldn't always just bank it on, I've got to have a credit score in order to have a house. That's just not the case. I also want to mention too, this is important. There's a big difference between having no credit and having bad credit. All right. Let's just be clear about this. We're talking about two different things when we're going through this this kind of debate and this conversation. Is that if you've got bad credit, it means that you're bad at paying your bills. That's what the credit score is rating you on. You're not good at paying your bills. If you have no credit, there's simply just no credit history to score you on, so you don't have a credit score. So if you go into an underwriting situation and you go in there with bad credit, they're going to be like, heck no. And you're going to be like, well, why? Brad said on his podcast that I could go through underwriting. Well, I didn't say you could go through it with bad credit because that bad credit history is showing that you can't pay your bills. I'm saying that you can get a house without any credit. That means that you have no credit history, essentially having no FICO score, because there's nothing out there for them to score you on because you don't have credit cards, you don't have car loans. There's just nothing for them to really report on you to even develop a score for you.
Okay, can I say, Brad, as much as I trust you, I was skeptical, and I've heard you say this so many times. I'm a bit of a skeptic. So, but I've heard you say, no, you could get it with no credit at all. You could buy a house. And that's our goal. Mine and my husband's goal is to get a house. That's coming up really soon. So when you kept saying that, I was like, yeah, well, maybe, but it's easier with a credit score. However, I recently asked a few questions with a credit union in my area, and it seems like it's actually the whole manual underwriting is pretty easy overall. So I am no longer worried about a credit score, period. So we're good to get a house whenever we're ready.
That's awesome. And let's be clear too, like this podcast isn't also giving you permission just to go out there and just screw up your credit score. That's not what we're enticing you to do here. We're not telling you to stop paying your bills because your credit score doesn't matter. No, that's not what we're saying. We're just saying at the end of the day, is it really as important as we're making it out to be? If you truly want to get to the point of, the goal of this podcast is to teach you how to live a stress-free and debt-free life. If you really want to get to that point, is the credit score going to be a big factor in helping you get there? And my argument to it is based on how I've lived our lives, not other people, not our members, but us personally. I just haven't seen how it plays really any role in reaching financial freedom.
Well, I think, and again, going back to buying a home, I think it goes back to that need versus want. And I think a lot of the debate gets into, well, I can't buy a home, without a credit score if I only have 5% down. That might be true. So maybe you need to save 20%. Well, I can't save 20%. Well, so there are going to be, it may be more difficult to get a loan for house payment and things like that, but you don't need it. And I think that's where some of the debate lies is, and you kind of said it, Amber, easier versus need. A lot of people point to it and say, well, it's easier. It's easier to get it with a credit score, and I can only get 5% down or 3.5% down and I can have a house. Well, yeah, but we wouldn't recommend you doing that anyway, regardless, so if you would save up your down payment, then it becomes no longer that need. And then it becomes almost a match. Like I can get a loan either way if I have the proper down payment.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we should point that out too. Yeah. I mean, the underwriting process, you are going to be required to to bring more. You know, there's probably going to be more of a down payment. There's going to be more information that you're going to have to share. Like, I mean, going through life without a credit score, yes, can pose some challenges. But then you have to ask yourself the question, is stress-free worth having a little difficulty in obtaining things? Things. We're talking about just stuff, right? Is stress-free worth it? And in my opinion, it has been 100% completely worth it to not play the financial game the way the financial industry wants you to play it. Because, again, our family's been tested time and time again with different emergencies and different circumstances in life that come up. And a credit score has played no role in any of that in helping us get through it. In fact, having cash in the bank, having a good budget, having a good sound financial plan have been the things that have helped us through a lot of those situations. That's ultimately the goal of this particular show, is to challenge this. How important really is the credit score kind of on the ladder? Or would other things be more important? Things like maybe a budget, maybe some good short-term and long-term savings goals. Maybe getting in the habit, guys, like we talked about, paying cash and staying away from debt and not going further into debt and not always relying on payments. Heck, maybe an emergency fund would be good. And guys, I told you I was going to talk about this, but you know, right now we're like, what, 6 weeks into this kind of COVID-19 thing. And, you know, reading the news articles and people who are financially struggling, and you don't see people running around in the streets freaking out about their credit scores right now. What are they freaking out about? They don't have any money, right? So when we're talking about crisis situations, emergencies, tragedies that come up in your life, when shit hits the fan, what's more important in those situations? Money in the bank, right? And those are the things that we need to be focused on outside of these tragedies, outside of these crises, because that is when you prepare for them. You don't prepare for them while it's happening. You prepare for them when it's not happening, when you're expecting it to happen. And when you're going through some of that stuff, focusing more on savings, emergency funds, budgets, living below your means, patience, paying cash, all of those things are going to help you during a crisis. Your credit score is going to be worthless, and it's been worthless to so many people this last 6 weeks, because it's not helping you. It only helps you get more debt, and that's the last thing most of us really need right now.
Well, and I think right now too, I mean, if you are really struggling, you know, I don't know, we're into the 20-something million people laid off. If you don't have an income, I don't care if your credit score is 750, 800, there's not a lot of people that are willing to give you a ton of money right now. You know, you really need that cash in the bank to kind of fall back on and not be relying on that credit score to help you out in a bind like now, because it would be tough to get a loan right now, no matter what.
Yep, absolutely. So at the end of the day, here's the deal. If you want to have a good credit score, that's fine. But our argument, and really the point that we just want to bring up today, is that just don't put it ahead of the most important things like budgeting, saving, building an emergency fund, living below your means, reducing debt, getting to the point where you're not always stressing about your finances. Those are the things that truly matter. So focus on those things, and you'll be amazed at how much your financial life improves. And eventually, kind of like what Amber said, as you get through your debt-free journey, you may tend to find out that, you know what, this credit score really isn't as important as I thought it was.
Hey, what's this sightseeing? I thought this was a party! Let's dance!
All right, it is time for the celebrations of the show. We're going to kick it off with Kelsey. Kelsey just paid off her second credit card out of 6 and put an extra $100 towards her car payment. Good job, Kelsey.
Sherry Gordon finally making progress and back on track. $1,000 in her emergency fund and 2 payments left to pay off on her first credit card. Feels good.
Jeannie Bodner, today I'm grateful. My 15-year-old vacuum motor caught fire, and I had to replace it. I'm grateful that the vacuum lasted me 15 years, during which most of it was during financial hardships, and I didn't have to replace it then. I'm grateful that I was able to run out after researching to purchase a new vacuum without having to be cheap. I'm grateful that I didn't have to touch my emergency fund for this purchase, but instead had the money in my household sinking fund. I'm grateful for this group, for all your support and encouragement. Awesome.
Awesome job. You hear she's not grateful for? She's not grateful for a credit score. She's grateful she had a plan. Way to go. That is awesome. Good for you.
Jessica Herbs paid off my car and 2 small loans this month for a total of $650.
Awesome. Way to go, Jessica. Congratulations to you. Bobby Johnson. I like how my thought processes have changed since being here. I received my tax refund and stimulus check yesterday, and I'm carefully contemplating where all that money goes and how long I can hold on to it over the next 6 to 8 months. 2 years ago, I would have thought about what else could I buy. And that is a huge, huge behavior change. Bobby's been with us for some time now. That is fantastic. Good for her.
Mariah Clark. So since starting their journey 3.5 years ago, Mariah and her family have saved $22,248.90 and have paid off $42,496.61 since August of 2016.
Wow.
Yeah, as impressive. Mariah, her husband, just amazing. 3 small kids. They've just come just a long way. It's been so impressive to see their story over the last couple of years. So, hey, everybody, thanks for hanging out with us today. We love your feedback, and it also helps us grow our podcast. Please leave us an honest review in Apple Podcasts. We read every single one of those. And as you know, the Debt Free Dad podcast is here to help you live a happier and stress-free financial life. And if you know someone who could benefit from our show, please give us a share. We appreciate you, and we will see you on an upcoming episode of the podcast. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Debt Free Dad podcast. For more free resources to kick debt and financial stress, head over to therealdebtfreedad.com.